Ah, the Nintendo 64, my favorite game system of all time. Back when COVID first started in 2020, I grew bored of just sitting at home, not being able to do anything exciting. So out of pure boredom, I decided to get into game collecting, inspired by some of my other gamer friends. And after collecting for a few different systems, I gravitated more and more towards the N64.
Hey guys, Lucas here. So about a year ago, I completed the N64 collection, but it wasn't until recently when I put it on full display. So now I'm here to give you a little showcase and answer a little Q&A for you about it. Let's get into it. So when I say complete N64 collection, I'm not just talking about the American games. I'm talking about each and every game ever released for the system in the world.
There are 296 games in the North American collection, plus an additional 85 games only released in Japan, 4 games only released in Europe and Australia, and 3 games released in both of those different regions, making it a grand total of 388 games released worldwide. Now that may seem like a big number, but it's actually one of the smallest game console libraries ever, making it a very easy one to start collecting for.
Now, if you were born in the 90s like me, the N64 probably gives you a lot of nostalgia. And that's another reason why I chose this specific console.
Everything from the cartridge formats to the 3-handle controller to some iconic titles like Star Fox 64, Donkey Kong 64, and of course, Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time.
Throughout my collecting journey, and even now that it's over, I get a lot of questions about this collection. So I'm here to answer them for you. Let's get started. How long did it take you to complete the collection? So it took about 3 years from the start of 2020, March of 2020, till about February 23rd, 2023.
Now, I never owned an N64 as a kid, but I always loved the system, and a lot of my friends had one, so we would always play it when I would go over to their houses. I finally got mine as a birthday present in 2009. It's this fantastic ice blue variant.
What are some of your favorite titles for the system, and have you played all of them? So to start with the second part of that question, yes, I actually have played all of these cartridges. I always test out the game before I put a sticker on it and before it goes on the shelf.
If I had to choose a top 5, though, that's a really loaded question. But if I had to, I would probably start with Mario 64 and Mario Kart 64. I think those two are no-brainers. Super Mario 64, it doesn't just define the console, it defines that whole generation. It's a timeless classic that never gets old. I always enjoy going back to it every so often just to play every single level again. It's a classic. There's nothing else to say about it.
Mario Kart 64. Although it hasn't aged as well as the other Mario Kart games in the series, it's still probably my favorite racer of all time. The graphics have their own unique charm to them, from the pseudo 3D racers on an actual 3D plane. If you're old enough to remember the Super Nintendo, it almost reminds you of Super Mario Kart in a sense.
Number 3 would have to be Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask. Nothing against Ocarina of Time, that's still a timeless gem. But Majora's Mask just did it a little bit better for me. From the darker, grittier themes to the timer gimmick, and it's also one of the few Zelda games without Ganondorf in it. Number 4 would have to be Sin and Punishment. This game was only released in Japan.
It's a rail shooter much like Star Fox, where you go around shooting bad guys and aliens, saving the world and saving the universe. That was, and still is, quite the popular theme over in Japan. This game is actually available in America now, thanks to the N64 expansion for the Switch. So if you haven't played this game, and you want to, I would not pass it up. And I'd probably have to wrap it up with Custom Robo, another game that was only released in Japan.
This is a sandbox robot fighting style battle arena game, where you get a toy robot for your 10th birthday and fight other kids' robots, while also winning tournaments and fighting a criminal syndicate who wants to use those robots for evil. Kinda sounds like the Pokemon games. It's probably why I like it so much.
Also, to answer your question, yes, I do know Japanese. One of the reasons why I wanted to learn the language was to play the Japanese games.
Other notable games that I really like to play include Donkey Kong 64, Star Fox 64, Ocarina of Time, and of course everyone's favorite, Conker's Bad Fur Day. Also some less popular games include Revolt, which is an RC car racer, Tom and Jerry Fists of Fury, and F-Zero X. Some notable foreign titles in the Japanese market include Dobutsu no Mori, which means Animal Crossing in Japanese. Yes, you heard that right. Animal Crossing originally started on the Nintendo 64 in Japan. We got it on the GameCube just a couple years later. There is also Getter Love, which is a Mario Party-like dating simulator game. I also named a song after this game too. Denshade Go. This is a train driving simulator that also has a special train driving controller that came with it. I don't have that controller, however. Dance Dance Revolution Disney Dancing Museum. Now this one's a bit confusing to me because it's a Disney game that was only released overseas. You'd think it would be released here too, considering it was a Disney game. Pocket Monster Stadium. This is not to be confused with the Pokemon Stadium that we have here. This was more like the prequel or the precursor to that stadium. There was only 42 Pokemon to choose from, and there was only 2 cups to compete in this version. Bangai-O, a 2D side-scrolling rail shooter that is super addicting. It's pretty obscure, but it's definitely worth the playing time. Then there's Taz Express, which is only released in Europe. You get to play as Taz from Looney Tunes while delivering packages. I haven't done much gameplay of this because my European N64 will only stay powered for so long. There's a little power conversion issue with the PAL region games. Morita Shogi 64. One of the more unique cartridges in the set. Reason being is because it has a dial-up phone jack on top of the cart, allowing you to play online with friends and people you don't even know. Seems to me like Japan gets all the best stuff. And Bomberman 64 Arcade Edition. This was the last game to be released in Japan. Not to be confused with the Bomberman 64 that was released here. This one's a very different game. Also, if you're wondering, Mario Party 3 was the last game released in Europe and Australia, and Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 was the last game released here in North America, and the last game released for the system altogether. It's pretty interesting that this game was released for the N64, considering it was released 4 months after the console was discontinued.
What was the most expensive and or rarest game that you bought? Well, that's a very uncomfortable question to answer, so I won't be saying prices, but I will say the rarest game in the North American set would be Clay Fighter Sculptor's Cut.
A Blockbuster rental exclusive from back in the day. Rental exclusive as in you couldn't buy this game, just rent it from Blockbuster. It was essentially an updated version of Clay Fighter 63 1/3. Only 20,000 carts were ever made, and estimates are that there are probably less than 10,000 left in existence, making this game a hot commodity.
Clay Fighter Sculptor's Cut was actually not the most expensive game that I bought in the American set. That would have been Super Bowling.
A very late bowling title that got passed up due to more exciting games that came out at the same time. This one was released just a few months before the GameCube came out.
But the rarest and most expensive game that I had to buy was actually not from America. That would actually be Mario no Photopea, which translates to Mario Photoshop.
It's essentially a Photoshop game for your N64. The cartridge has a unique shape to it, which allows you to put in what they call smart media cards, very early storage medium for very early digital cameras released in Japan. It's hard to find any information on this game, but one source that I found on Reddit claims that there might be less than 2,000 copies left in existence, and quite possibly 500 complete in box copies left, making it not just the rarest N64 game, but the rarest Mario game ever released and a piece of Nintendo lore.
Where did you get the end labels from? So I got the end labels from Etsy. Not only does it make the games look more organized and nicer, but it could also be used as a checklist to see which games you're still missing.
And yes, the Japanese and European games also have their own end labels to them.
What was the first and last games that you collected for the system? So Mario 64 was the first game I got total. I don't remember the first game I got when I made it a collecting goal, but the last games I found in the foreign library would be Airborder 64 and Last Legion UX. They both came in the same package.
One's a futuristic hoverboarding game, and it was actually also released in Europe too, I just have the Japanese copy. And the other is another robot fighter. The last games that I got in the American library was International Superstar Soccer 2000. That was the last one I found on my own. And then the last game I got officially from my friend who was saving it for me was Chopper Attack. On the back I put the date I got it and the number 388 to signify that I had acquired the last game I needed to complete the collection.
And the last question being, what do you plan on doing with this collection? So the big thing for me is game preservation. With an all-digital future being inevitable, most of the games you see on the shelves here will not be properly preserved because they're licensed games. My goal is to make sure that all these cartridges last as long as they can before they break. What a lot of people don't understand is that digital property is not actually property. All the subscriptions that you have, all the streaming services that you pay for, those are long-term rentals dressed up as property. And I feel like a lot of people don't understand that too. So that's one of the reasons I'm concerned about game preservation, but another one is because being able to say that you have hard copies of each and every game for a system, that's quite the bragging right as well. And when I'm old and I've had my fun with these games, I'll donate them to a museum. That's the plan right now. Because a collection like this definitely belongs in a museum. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this little showcase I put on for you, and I hope this video also helped some of you who might be wanting to start your own N64 collections. If you have any other questions, you can reach out to me, and I'll see you guys later.